Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us. Our panel discussion is going to focus on building an inclusive quantum workforce. And I'm delighted to be joined by three leaders in the field of quantum information science. May Alowish, who is the Chief Data and Innovation Officer at Gulf Bank, Dr. Araceli Venegas Gomez, Founder and Chief Executive Officer at Querica, and Anisha Musti, Founder of Community. Welcome to you all. Could you please tell our viewers a little bit about your organization and your role? Let's start with May.
Thank you, Christopher. As you said, I'm the Chief Data and Innovation Officer at Gulf Bank. We're majorly a major retail and corporate bank in Kuwait. My role in the bank is to run the data and innovation practice. I've been doing this, I've been in the data IT field for 20 years now. I spent my career between Kuwait and the United States, where I've done 10 years of banking and 10 years of pure analytics and data with Google partners in the States. And in my current position, kind of leading the data practice, kind of overseeing the overall digital transformation initiatives, and also working on implementing data science analytics use cases for all departments in the bank.
Great, thank you, May. Anisha, tell us about what you're up to.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Anisha. I am the founder and CEO of Community. We are an organization that's training the next generation quantum workforce. We take a no prerequisites approach to learning, which means that people who use our content don't need to know anything about math, computer science, or physics to get into the field. And we've grown across the world, and we're in 26 different countries right now.
Wow, fantastic. And Araceli, tell us about your work at Querica.
Thanks, Chris. So yeah, a little bit of my background. I'm an aerospace engineer who was working in industry, fell in love with quantum physics, and decided to change careers. I moved from one country to another and followed my passion, and I had a PhD. I pursued a PhD in quantum simulation, and trying to close the gap that I realized that it was between academia and industry. I founded Cureka, Quantum Resources and Careers, with a focus in skills, training, education, the quantum workforce, and any other gap that can be in the community. Also, trying to focus in emerging regions and communities around the world to bring quantum for everyone.
Wow, terrific. Well, thank you. So I want to start the conversation sort of at a meta level, right? I think it's good to call out the fact that diverse teams deliver more creative and innovative solutions to business challenges. Quantum is no different, right? So, are there examples of diverse teams coming up with, say, unique and valuable solutions that might not have been arrived at with a gender homogeneous team? And May, you mentioned some data you wanted to share as we prepared for this discussion. Can you tell us about what you discovered, what your
Sure,
perspective is?
Christopher. As you said, data has no bias. So, time and again, we see statistics around this. And, BCG found that companies that are focusing on driving diversity have actually 19% higher revenues in innovation specifically. So, really more innovative teams. Wall Street Journal mentioned that teams that follow an inclusive process, they make decisions twice as fast, meaning with half the meetings. So, I know all of us would like to have less meetings any day. And then, we all heard about also, no diversity leading to failures. Like we all know about the Xbox that Microsoft was almost launching, and they had no diversity in their teams. And the Xbox almost launched while the actual game does not work on kids or women, because the whole tech team that developed that were just the male in their 30s. So that was their only testing way, and they kind of missed out the whole segment that could have really gone bad if they didn't have it. And their officer there mentioned, like, this is what happens when you don't have diverse teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's again the data has no bias, so I think it's great to call that out. And as we begin this conversation about the power of inclusion and diversity and equity, so let us shift gears and talk about the ways we can get younger people started. So those in high school and even middle school. How can we expose girls and minority students to quantum at a younger age to get them oriented and engaged? And Anisha, you mentioned it as part of the work you're doing at Community, but can you give us a little more detail about your audience? I know you high school is a key focus area, but I know you're expanding the program as well.
We began our journey with quantum education with high school students. And our goal with this, as I said before, was really delivering no prerequisites content that people can access regardless of their background in technical science. And from there, although we started with the primary audience being high school students, we've noticed that a lot of people have actually wanted to take our courses, even if they're further down in the education pipeline or not even in the education pipeline, and simply looking to just learn more about quantum, even if they're in a different career path. But something that I have noticed, even with doing this after the couple of years that I have, is that our audience is still primarily men. It is about 70 to 30 men, male to female, which is an unfortunate reality, but it does just reflect what the greater like science landscape looks like. When we look at science in most fields, it is pretty much male dominated. And I think part of that comes from just not having a support infrastructure for a lot of these women. And we see that the join rate for a lot of scientific fields is very similar to male to female, but over time, those females end up dropping out. A lot of them do. And a lot of that has to do with support infrastructure and difficulties that they face along the way.
And are you finding that you're getting more women or girls, young women interested in quantum through your, say, marketing and or your capabilities, your offerings, your solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely is easier to get people interested in science at a young age because there's no reason why a woman would be less likely to enjoy science than a man. They're equally likely to enjoy it, which is why at younger ages, we see that it is about 50-50, maybe slight skew in one direction or another, but generally they are joining at the same rate. The problem is more the drop off, which is over time they leave because communities end up being very toxic and not that beneficial for women. So our goal with community is to make it as inclusive as possible. And of course, we're doing everything that we can, and we still see the ratio that we do. We still see it 70 to 30. And that's something that is actually better than a lot of places, but it is still not ideal. And we're working on how we can make that better.
Well, thank you for sharing that perspective. Araceli, I want to ask you, you're in a unique position in that your company provides both training as well as career development guidance for quantum talent. So I wonder if you have any specific strategies for increasing outreach to women and minorities at Quarica that you can share.
Thanks, Chris. Well, yeah, as we know, this is a hot topic. It's very hard to bring people. So we know that the quantum talent per se is already scarce. So if we think about companies looking to hire, so imagine you have very few people that have already the skills that you need for your position. Now you want a diverse team. And I see that more and more companies are coming and say, can you do something about diversity? We are looking for these roles, but we want a diverse team. So we have that in front of our minds right now when thinking about how we want to evolve in strategy in the quantum community. Everyone is thinking about, we want a diverse team, we need more women, but it's just difficult to find. So what initiatives could we do to bring more women in quantum? I guess more just showing role models helps. I try, for example, when I go to other events that say, I have done these and everything is fine, so you can also do it. So in terms of career development, sometimes is giving that advice like, yes, you can. That's one example. And I wanted to share with you, because this was really recent, like 3 weeks ago, that I was invited in-person event where it was for undergraduate women in physics. Because I am from engineering, and in engineering, there were not so many women. But in physics, in undergrads, I had the feeling that it was almost 50-50. But it was the first event that it was just for undergrads, women, female. And they were really chatty. They had a lot of questions. They were coming and say, they were looking for advice. If you were going to an event like that, not focused on female, like, everyone welcome, those people wouldn't be chatty. They wouldn't ask questions. So for me, it was really an example of an initiative where you could give more space. They will breathe and they will ask, and they will really be part of the event much more than if it was, let's say, an event open for everyone. I just wanted to share this here because I found it really curious.
Yeah, so the question it begs is, so who sponsored that event, and can we get them to do it again or do it in other settings, or 4 times
Yeah,
a
it was
year?
it was
Or,
focusing. Yeah, it was focused on the UK. It was UK and Ireland. I think it was part of the IUP and 10 universities. But I really hope that we can launch something like this in quantum in general, in other regions. And there are other examples of people trying to do more things in for diversity. I'm gonna give you another example. Sorry, I like to give examples.
no, please.
So, I'm organizing an event that is tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, and we want to have a diversity panel, and we are focused in a specific region, and it's hard to have even a diverse panel to speak about diversity because yeah, you just don't find people. So we need to do a lot of stuff just to make this let's say all the community be able to talk, to be part of the events, and just maybe having more focus events on that when everyone is welcome.
And that's great. Thanks for sharing those stories. Terrific. May, I want to come back to you. As a woman working in tech at a financial services firm, at a bank, you're uniquely positioned to lead a quantum inclusion conversation, right? So, wondering how you recruit, say, tech savvy women to join the team and then explore quantum, since certainly the banking and financial services sectors are areas where quantum is being actively explored.
Yeah, I
How do
mean,
you approach
one of the
that?
things I keep saying is that, I hire for culture, train for skill. Because as Araceli was saying, it's skill is hard in this in this field, and even in data and tech, it's very scarce when I'm looking for something with specific data scientist who does a certain thing. So if you have somebody with the right culture, and somebody of course who's willing to learn, then do train them for the skill. They're worth the investment. And one thing that both kind of, I agreed with both Anisha and Araceli, how kind of there are some problems that are across and not just around quantum. For example, when Dr. Araceli mentioned, there is no role models or examples. Like me as a millennial, being an engineer and being in tech, all we looked at are the role models of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. There wasn't like the female leader of tech, and it's something that we kind of have to consciously really focus on, and really kind of show some examples for these young women to be interested in such team. Because with women, it's more of the power of the pack, like you were saying, that they need to have these kind of close social networks, and where they can share stories and really feel like she can do it and I can do it, or really hear from somebody who they know on a first level, kind of, not, and a bigger network. And then the way they do networking, when it becomes a professional networking, that men like kind of the big network with our just contacts, and that's what they do, like industry contacts, versus women don't do that as much, but they need to hear the stories from other women. And that's how they kind of get into the field, or get someone to actually kind of coach them into this field. So that's something that's also important. So when you show and highlight some examples of women, you're automatically attracting more people into the quantum field. One thing I think that Anisha was talking about is that, we get the 50-50 at the beginning, and then they don't stick, they kind of drop off. Is it the community? Is it that? But one of the things is that, when we have those networks, and when they have their packs in tech or in quantum, they really kind of stick together and help each other out to stay in that field. If we don't make those groups, and I've seen that, like, we have women in data science and women in analytics and women in, and so on. But I don't see the men in data science or men in analytics, because they just, they operate differently. They don't need that social network, in the professional aspect. So some people say like it's overdone with women, but that's the way they operate. Every gender has its way of working. And once we do that, and even within our company, I worked in one company where within our company we formed a group of the ladies in the company, and we talked about certain issues. Sometimes we talk about funny schedules with kids. Sometimes we talk just about certain bias that we face, and so on. And then we highlighted, if something that was across the company, we talk to management and we fix it. This way we retain people and not lose them. So all these different things, that when you understand kind of the anatomy of how women actually work in tech, you'll be able to solve for these problems and really encourage them not to just join, but really stay in that field.
Yeah. So let's continue on that theme. There are an increasing number of organizations that are focused on the issue of inclusion in quantum. I think of Denise Ruffner's terrific initiative, the Women in Quantum Summits. She's done, I think, 5 of them. They're terrific ways to connect women in the quantum space. There's Wicked, right? Women in Quantum Development, WIQD. Are there other programs you could share with our viewers that provide this kind of community focused on engaging women in quantum? Araceli, let's start with you.
Yeah, a couple of examples could be Q-Turn. This is a conference, mainly academic, but it's really for diversity, not only about gender, but really about diversity in general in quantum. And what I realize is that most of the speakers are speakers that you wouldn't see in the bigger conferences. That's, I think, is a very good initiative. There are a lot of researchers, and for any reason, we don't know, they are just not invited to bigger conferences. So in this conference, you hear names that maybe they are not famous enough, but it's really, really good initiative. And the other one is the group for gender equality from the Quantum Flagship in Europe. I have been involved since 2019, so since the very beginning. We really wanted to kind of not focus only in gender, but only with gender, there is already a lot to do. So we had unconscious bias training. We tried to bring, we had a survey when we tried to see how the community thinks about diversity and gender in quantum in general. We have published those results. We had kind of a marketing campaign. So we try our best to identify. But what we think, and I say we because I'm really involved, is that sometimes it can only come from the top. It's a top-down approach. So the people with power, so in this case in Europe, the European Commission, they need to say, we are going to put money to making these initiatives at different levels. So for example, for women that are working and they need to raise their kids, that they need more flexibility. Or for girls in high schools, how can we have more outreach initiatives in schools about that? So there are a lot of things that at the end, everybody thinks that is important, but it's very, very hard to find funding to be able to move forward.
Yeah, funding. Oh my goodness. Anisha, what's your take on what are you seeing in terms of, say, communities or affinity groups or mentoring for, say, high school students and women in particular in quantum?
Yeah, I mean, as you guys mentioned, there are a lot of groups out there that are dedicated to women in quantum, but there are also smaller ones that go on within universities. So, institutions like Yale, the Joint Quantum Institute, they all have specific women in quantum groups that go on when you join to be part of their lab or part of their research program. There's also other places like I think the Center for Quantum Computation in Australia, they offer specific scholarships to women who want to join them in quantum specifically. And things like this exist all over. And for a woman, there are opportunities that are there that make these specific workplaces so much more inclusive and beneficial for them to work in.
Yeah. And May, what about you? What are you seeing? Are there other organizations or mentoring programs that you might share with our viewers?
And one of the things that I've seen most kind of happen is during in organizations. For example, if I'm involved heavily and I'm board member of Digital Analytics Association, and what we did is because really there's younger people in the field and there's people who can share the experience and mentor other people. So we formalized an actual mentoring program where you would be paired with a mentor. And I think that's one field where a lot of these organizations now, the industry organizations, nonprofit, but really kind of have people on all, on both ends of the spectrum. So really pairing those people together is something that's important to make sure that we build the next generation. And sometimes even companies do that internally to have a mentoring program within the company, because sometimes it's not just a technical thing that you need to learn. Sometimes it's about leadership. Sometimes it's about life balance, and you just need somebody to kind of mentor you or be the sounding board about some decisions that you need.
Yeah, so that makes perfect sense. I want to talk about sort of careers and inclusion in non-science related roles in quantum. So, Araceli, in your terrific online brochure, Careers in Quantum 2022, there's a plug for that. I encourage all our viewers to go to your website and download it or view it. It's terrific. But you call out, among other things, the opportunities in quantum for people with both technical and non-technical skills. And I wonder how this plays into conversations about ways in which women or minorities who may not have a science or STEM background could still work in quantum. What's your take on
Thanks
that?
for the kind words, Chris. It's hard, but I just think reaching out to people with no technical background or just people new to quantum and telling them, even if you're coming from marketing, from HR, you're passionate about anything about emerging technologies. Maybe you haven't heard of quantum. Maybe you can work in quantum technologies, and they hear that and it's like, oh really, tell me more. And I'm going to give you an example, because as someone who is actually joining my company very soon has no background at all in technical, and she's so excited about quantum. It's like really so motivated. So I think we need to make clear that there is space for everyone. What I have also seen is people with technical background that they just wanted to go into non-technical roles, like for example sales or marketing. These roles, in general, what I see is that there are more women that kind of pivot between technical to non-technical by any reason. But there are also those opportunities. So quantum is a very, of course, emerging field that is really starting to just flourish. And there are so many different opportunities. So for whoever coming from quantum, going into something completely non-technical, or people coming from technical that would like to just do something else in that is the emerging field of quantum, there is a place for everyone. It's just about awareness. I think it's not there. A lot of people are just not aware. So we just need to go to these special conferences about all the topics and try to bring them in.
Yeah, and Anisha, working sort of at the beginning of the pipeline, if you will, how does community, for example, encourage non-science women to get involved in quantum?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we've just started doing, as it has taken me a little bit of a time to realize it as well. But quantum is an industry, and that's how we start teaching it to people. Is it is not just a field where you are going to be training to be a quantum physicist. It's an entire industry. So in an industry, there are every single role. There's marketing, as Araceli said. There's sales. There is HR. There's all of these things, and you don't even need to necessarily fall in love with quantum just yet, but you can latch on to this feeling of excitement that comes just being on this cusp of something new, something innovative, and latch on to that feeling within people, and that really gets them into quantum. And you can tell them whatever you're interested in, you can do it in quantum. And not only that, but you're going to be like a pioneering force in quantum that you probably won't be in any other field. And I think that sells a lot of people on the idea of at least looking into quantum if it wasn't something they considered before. But I do think generally what Araceli said, there is a lack of awareness, and that's something that we're trying to fix by just bringing it into schools, exposing it to as many people as possible, because not everyone's going to latch onto it, but the more people who hear about it, the more people that we're going to potentially get interested and go the distance.
And May, are you having those kinds of conversations at Gulf Bank about, non-science specific roles in quantum?
Yes, and specifically because we're trying to roll out kind of the self-serve analytics across the bank. So I go to people who are in corporate or in risk, or and I'm trying to get them to basically use the data and get their own insights and be analysts. And they're like, no, I'm not a data person. I just do my work as corporate. I'm a corporate banker, or I'm a risk, kind of a analyst or something, but I'm not a data person. And that's when we really have to have that conversation, is that data is for everybody. Data is not for just, it's not just IT. And and that's kind of what Anisha was just saying, is that this is a whole industry now. It's being part of every single company or every single industry kind of vertical. So in a way, sometimes you gotta really show them that this is not a pure physics or IT or something. This is something that's coming into your business. In order to do your business better, you need data, you need, quantum computing. This is where the world is going, and kind of bring it home and give some examples where really this is just going to be, just like everybody had to get trained for Microsoft Word and Office before and get like a little license or certificate. Right now, everybody can pull their own data and do that without needing some training. So it's, I see it that, We really had to go through this in the past few years where we train people as, you can pull your own data, you can do your own report, you can even drag and drop and make your dashboard. And that was new to them because I'm not a dashboard person, but now they are because they realize it's different. Now with quantum later on, in a few years, they'll be able to do some self-serve, I believe, given that that what they need is really their business knowledge. And knowing what tool to use is something that we can train them. Like I said, we train them for skill, but really if they have that right business background, I believe everybody's fit to use the technology. As long as we just make sure that transformation there, it's not just, it becomes like another scary change for them that, we really need you as a person, as a business expert. We're building on that with giving you the right tools and technologies.
Terrific. So we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I want to close by asking each of you to take a minute or so and share a piece of advice, maybe words of wisdom, based on where you sit, your perspective, what you've learned, where you are in your current role. Advice to quantum companies to improve their DEI or inclusion posture. Araceli, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I think with the pandemic in the last 2 years, we have seen that remote and working remotely is an option. So keep it that way. I think giving the option to people from specific regions to work from wherever they are, because they have the skills, they can maybe just not able for any specific reason move somewhere else. Keep that in mind when you are trying to hire. It's possible to work remotely. We know it. So when you are thinking about having a diverse team, be open that that person could be everywhere. If you want a diverse team, just be flexible.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Anisha, what would you say to a quantum computing company to improve
Yeah,
inclusion?
I mean, the biggest thing is community. And I mentioned those institutions before that are working to create women in quantum groups within their companies. And I know Mai also said that she experienced that. But that experience is so important because there aren't that many women in quantum. And it's hard to become friends and make a community when they're so sparse and spread out. But doing the work within a company to bring them together and give them that place that's easy to find, easy to go to find other women who they can share their struggles with, share their issues, and feel, again, that sense of community is so important for diversity. And it's what keeps them there in the long term as opposed to just getting them to join, which is the drop off stuff that we were talking about.
Great. Thank you. And May, what about you? What would you say to a quantum computing company to improve?
I think one of the things is that, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we really focus about that 50%, people want to hire and hire until they get that 50% and they're like, okay, done, we're good. But that's not what makes it work. Getting to that 50%, they might drop off the next day and then your number is off and then you're back to the hiring process. It's really focusing on what kind of support programs do you have for women and diversity groups? What kind of leadership programs can you offer them? What can you build within your company to maybe get that 50% organically from within? You don't have to keep hiring, but really, find that talent, grow it and make those leaders, or really work on attracting more people by coming to you because you have the right support. Dr. Asali mentioned kind of remote workforce is one way to do it. There's flexible programs for specifically for women or other diverse groups. So really, for companies to really achieve diversity inclusion, really focus on the support rather than just numbers.
Great. Well, thank you, May. Thank you, Anisha. Thank you, Araceli. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for sharing your insight and perspective. And hope you have enjoyed viewing this, attendees of Commercializing Quantum. And we'll see you at the next one.